I've got
Just
some
snuck
water.
down
Cheers.
upstairs, so I
Nice
just
to meet
snuck
you.
it.
Thanks so much for joining me on this documentary. Fantastic. I'm really pleased. I'll just tell you a bit about the video project that we've got here. We're going to be creating this video project to help aspiring owners make better choices when they acquire a puppy or a dog, so that they have a much better outcome and enjoy the relationship more, and those dogs don't end up in shelters and things like that. So people have a great bond with their pet and reap all the benefits that dog ownership can provide. So I know you've done a lot of work in this area, and I guess the first question I'd like to ask you is if people want to end up with a dog that fits in harmoniously with their family, what should they do?
Well, I mean, it depends whether they're going to get a puppy or an adult dog. So,
Sure.
which you're talking about?
We'll start with the puppy.
The puppy. Well, the most important thing there is that the breeder has done their job. You know, they're probably going to get a puppy when it's about 8 weeks old. And at that time, the critical period of socialization is nearly 2/3 over. And so the breeder should have really socialized this dog to, I would say, about 100 people, which of course can be done quite safely in the kennel. We don't take the dog outside where it's risky to, parvo and other diseases. Instead, we invite people to the kennel. I would say the only health precaution would be that outdoor shoes remain outside. So you get about 100 people, especially men and children, because that's who dogs are normally scared of, that handle, socialize with, and train the puppies. Additionally, the puppies should be house trained by then, chew toy trained by then, and should know some manners, at least come, sit, lie down, roll over. There's just no point in an owner getting a puppy at 8 weeks that isn't house trained. It's been raised in an area where it can pee and poop everywhere and anywhere, because if that's what it did in the kennel for 8 weeks, that's what it's going to do the first day they get it at home. And because it's allowed to eliminate indiscriminately, it's going to be even more difficult to house train. The chew toy training is important. The puppies in the last, 3 or 4 weeks in the kennel should be fed from chew toys. And obviously, every bit of food that comes out of the chew toy rewards the puppy for what he's doing, i.e. chewing the chew toy becomes the chew toyaholic, for lying down, for becoming calmer, very important for dogs like border collies and what have you. And they've been rewarded for being quiet. So they're not developing a recreational barking habit. And finally, of course, it's given them a hobby, chewing chew toys, so they're not going to freak out as much when left at home alone. So basically, by 8 weeks, I would say the puppies are, it's like make or break. You're either going to buy a puppy that's been raised to be a companion, a household companion, or they're going to buy livestock. And this, I think, is, I call it the great insanity, the big disgrace, that I would say only 1 out of 100 breeders are raising puppies that way. And so, the unsuspecting owner gets the short end of the stick and they're behind before they even start.
And failure of potty training is a really big issue, isn't it? It sort of can lead to all sorts of worse problems down the track and eventually the surrendering of the dog.
Oh, yeah. No question about it. Really simple, predictable, preventable behavior problems are the number one terminal illness for pet dogs and cats. And it's so silly when something like house training is so easy and so effortless. All the breeder has to do is to set up the living situation so the puppies are in an area which is long and thin, so 3 times as long as it's wide, with a bedroom at one end, and its toys and water supply, and then a toilet at the other end. And the puppy will naturally house train itself because it has 3 very strong preferences. 1, to pee and poop as far away from the bedroom as possible. 2, they like to pee where they smell urine. And 3, the substrate preference. As adult dogs, they like to urinate and defecate on the same ground surface that they did as puppies. So normally, what I put down is a roll of turf. For urban puppies, I put down a little, concrete tile, or it can be dirt. For poor people that live in places like Canada, I say, well, put down crushed ice, so the puppy get done. I'm being totally serious here. And you find by 4 weeks the puppies are naturally house trained. I mean, we've just done this in our house. We're not fostering, we're raising 2 puppies for 2 families which just aren't at home, and they were house trained by 4 or 5 weeks. I mean, it's really very, very simple.
Sure. Yeah, I do the same with mine. I actually breed miniature schnauzers. So I've been reading your stuff and following it. Have you done any has there been any studies done on the effectiveness of toy training for barking and things like that?
Yes, actually, I did it myself. That years ago, I had it's a behavior monitor. It's the massive computer that we built, and I put in the home with dogs, and it monitors their behavior, every step they take, every bark. It is brainlessly simple, like falling off a log, to raise a puppy so he's going to be bomb-proof and trustworthy with people. But breeders aren't doing it, owners aren't doing it, and vets aren't telling them to do it. And I put this in the house, and say the dog barks 1,130 times in a day. Then we would change their feeding from feeding them in bowls to moistening the food, stuffing it in hollow chew toys like Kongs, squirrel dudes, and the barking was decimated. I mean, reduced by 90% within 1 day. It's unbelievable. You don't, when you're doing, I was an academic for 10 years, and when you do experiments, you just don't get data like this. I mean,
Sure.
you have to use statistics to analyze it. With this, no, barking 1,100 barks a day down to 100 barks a day.
Wow.
Because, of course, the only way a dog chew a Kong is by lying down, so quietly, he's less likely to bark. But by being quiet, you can't chew and bark at the same time. And so each bit of food comes out, rewards the dog for being quiet. And that's always, the maxim in training. Stack the deck so the dog gets it right, and then reward the dog for getting it right. And then he's more likely to get it right in the future. It's not really rocket science.
Sure. And Dr. Dunbar, what should people do when they get their puppy home? And what's the best way to set that puppy up for success and harmony in the family?
Well, the most important thing is to carry on as the breeder should have done. Now, if the breeder hasn't done all this, if they haven't socialized, then that is a real emergency. I mean, you've only got 4 weeks to do it. The critical period of socialization really closes down about 12 to 13 weeks. So they've got to get 100 people in this house, handling the puppy, cradling it, cuddling it, examining it, restraining it, training it, come here, sit, lie down, roll over. We need men, we need children, and we need them quickly, or you're going to have a big problem. But the unusual thing is that people don't see the problem until much later, because the effects of insufficient socialization will not become apparent until the puppy is, say, 5 to 8 months old. At 2, 3, 4 months, the puppy looks Mr. Sociable and really confident. But the damage is done, and of course fears and phobias naturally don't develop until later in life, and so the puppy first becomes shy and wary, standoffish, and then fearful, then reactive, then aggressive. And by the time the owners notice they have a problem, it's too late to easily do anything about it. So that's the most important thing, that regardless of what the breeder has done, make sure you socialize the living daylights out of this puppy, and you do it totally safely at home. Invite people over. You have parties every night, men one night to watch a ball game on telly with beer, and women another night for good conversation and white wine and chocolate, or vice versa, depending on what your customs are in Australia. And then children. And, I want the puppy to grow up so that he's never going to feel wary or anxious around people, because that's a miserable life for the puppy and for the owner. Then the basic behavior problems, long-term confinement, short-term confinement. So the pup is always confined if the owner's not watching it. The biggest mistake that owners make, I think, is they give too much freedom and too little supervision. So the puppy makes mistakes, and every mistake heralds another 10 coming. So you want to make sure that house training is errorless, chew toy training is errorless. you know, and this is preparing the puppy for being left at home alone. I mean, in a nutshell, the best advice, I find this information so important, I wrote a couple of books, and they're available for free download at dogstardaily.com. And so download the books, they're free, follow the instructions, and don't make a mistake. And I tell people, you know, keep it up until that pup is at least 6 to 8 months old in terms of the behavior problems, you know, excessive barking, destructive chewing, house soiling, and what have you. And then the adolescent dog has pretty much got it. In terms of socializing with people, you never give up. You never give up. I mean, we have, I think, some of the friendliest dogs ever created because we put a lot of work into them. And a couple of these are really big dogs. And of course, because of our reputation, myself and my wife, they cannot make one mistake, or else people would say, "Oh, Dr. Dunbar's," you know, and the whole program crashes and burns. So our dogs are amazingly trustworthy, friendly, and confident around toddlers, newborns, kittens, puppies, rabbits, adult dogs, whatever. They all come into our house, and I don't have to worry. And that's just wonderful that I don't worry when other animals and people come to the house. But we don't stop classically conditioning. By that, I mean, if anyone comes to the house, I ask the dogs to sit, and then the owners give the dogs a treat. And then I say to the dogs, show them the cookie jar. And the dogs go to the kitchen, and I tell them, follow the dogs. You'll see where the cookie jar is, because the dogs are all sitting and like triangulating to it, you know. Everybody gives the dog a cookie. And this happens until the last day the dog's alive. I mean, we have a ritual in our house when our dogs, you know, eventually die, that the morning after they're buried, we each walk down to the grave with a cookie and we put it on the gravestone. And it's to symbolize this is the last classical conditioning treat. You know, you were a good dog. And it's kind of like Babe, the movie, you know, that'll do, dog. It's over now. And it's so important, and it is brainlessly simple, like falling off a log to raise a puppy so he's going to be bomb-proof and trustworthy with people. But breeders aren't doing it, owners aren't doing it, and vets aren't telling them to do it because they don't realize it's so important, because they look at the puppy at 2 months, 3 months, 4 months and say, but he's friendly. Why should we socialize? You see, the effects don't come out until later. And the effects of insufficient socialization are permanent. And the effects actually cause changes to the brain architecture. I mean, lack of socialization and your brain just doesn't develop properly. Simple as that. Such a shame.
Yeah, you can't go back and fix a bad puppyhood. It's just like a childhood in humans, isn't it?
It's, I have a quote here. I shall pull it out. I'm sitting downstairs because I'm actually at the party right now, so I came down with my wine.
Oh, that was really nice of you.
A little time out. But this is a quote from Frederick Douglass, and it says, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." And I think we can really apply this. It's easier to build strong puppies than to repair broken dogs. And to me, the whole sheltering system is so flawed and an incredible drain on time and money. I mean, to rehome a dog costs thousands of dollars. You know, why don't we just put into an education program like you're doing with this documentary, telling people that you don't get a good dog just by going to a breeder and buying a purebred puppy. It depends what the breeder's done, and I would say 1% do an incredible job. I mean, I know a Basenji breeder who he sells his puppies at 8 weeks for a lot of money, and they ask him why. He says because they're socialized to over 150 people, men and children. They're obedience trained, come, sit, lie down, roll over, high five, you know, bow, beg. They're chew toy trained, they're chew toyaholics. All they want to do is chew their chew toys. They'll never destroy your house. They will never become recreational barkers, and they're house trained. But only about 1% of breeders do that. And the owners don't carry on because they don't realize it's so important. They have this weird notion that they get a purebred dog and it's going to be fine. No, it won't happen though. I don't care, breed or breeding. I don't care whatever the breed, whether it's an Afghan, a Rottie, a Pit, or a Malamute. or a Bichon or a Shih Tzu. I don't care whether it's been bred, the best kennel club breeder, or in a puppy mill. The largest variable that influences the dog's livability is, was he socialized and trained before 3 months of age?
Absolutely. And I know you're well known as the father of puppy preschool.
Yeah.
So tell us all about puppy preschool and where'd you get the idea from, and how it's sort of taken off around the world now, and
Well,
the
I got the
importance of it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't, well, the importance of it is huge, but it's too little too late. I mean, we don't get puppies into puppy class till they're, 12 weeks old, maybe 10 weeks. We now do a human handling class at 8 weeks, but it's too late. Everything should have been done in the breeding kennel before 8 weeks. And then 8 to 12 weeks is catch up in the new home. So how important is early socialization and training? I mean, it's absolutely important, as important for puppies as it is for humans. Where I got the idea from was I had a puppy. It was a Malamute, and it's 8 weeks old. So I started ringing around. Where could I take him to training class? And I couldn't believe it. I rang 50 training schools, and they said, you've got to wait till he's 6 months to a year old. And, I didn't know anything about dog training. I said, well, that is stupid. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and my grandfather, he left school when he was 12, but we classically conditioned every animal on the farm. 1-day-old calves, chickens when they hatched. I'm being serious. Pigs, sheep, horses. They were all handled by children and men that offered food. This is how I grew up. I didn't create this stuff. I just grew up. My grandpa said, well, that's a smart thing to do. I want a cow's first impression of children to be a pleasant one, that they're feeding him milk from a bucket. So, I had this dog and I couldn't get him into class. And then my wife at the time said to me, this was horrible because I was a house husband. She had a great job and she earned lots of money. So I just stayed at home and, I remodeled the house, replumbed, rewired. And I was the house husband with my son and raised him. I loved it. Then one day she came to me and she said, look, I bought you a cigar. We were by the ocean. Said, you're going to go out and sit on that rock, and you're going to smoke the cigar and not come in till you can tell me how you're going to bring money into this relationship. And I thought, oh, God, it's scary. And I went, what shall I do? And I thought, well, I've been researching dog behavior for 10 years. It should probably be to do with dogs. I want it to be worthwhile, so I feel good about it. It has to be reproducible. So if I can do it, I can teach it to others. And I thought, I know, I'm going to teach puppy classes. It just came to me. I said, I've got a puppy, he needs to get into school. And so I went back to the Bay Area and rang up some vets and said, I'm teaching a new type of dog training class. We're training dogs to enjoy being handled, to be confident around people, so you can do your job as vets. So send me puppies. Then it was 3 months of age, and the first class filled up. We had 12 puppies, and it was like gangbusters. I mean, for 10 years, we were the only people doing it. And then various people, I met up with them. So Australia, Kirsty Seskel came to the World, what was it, the veterinary conference in San Francisco, and I gave a thing on early socialization. And so I think she was the person who took it from California to Australia. And now, of course, everyone does it. And what we're doing now is we're reinventing again, basically saying, puppy classes are cool, but it's too little too late. I'm really trying to tell owners, when you buy a puppy, you better check that the breeder has socialized it, house trained it, chew toy trained it, and manners trained it. And if not, find a breeder who has. Mm-hmm. And at the moment in Australia, I'm developing a directory of breeders in Australia. And I have about 30 breeders that are doing this stuff in Australia. But soon the list will grow, because I'm telling people, don't buy a puppy that's not house trained. It's dumb. Mm-hmm. Don't buy one that's not chew toy trained, and especially for the puppy's sake and yours, don't get one that hasn't been socialized. Because, if a puppy is anxious around people, his quality of life is going to be crap for life. Mm-hmm. And the owners too, because they can't invite people to the house. When they invite kids over, they have to put the dog away. They can't walk the dog. It's a crying shame, and I think it's the cruelest, most inhumane thing we do to dogs, that we don't socialize them prior to 3 months of age. We don't prepare them to live with humans. I mean, humans are difficult to live with. You know, how dogs put up with us, I really don't know. It's admirable.
Sure. What about people who are thinking about taking on a rescue dog? Have you got any sort of tips for them?
hmm I think what I tell people there is, well done. That's you've got a big heart, and I'm proud of you. But don't choose with your heart. Choose with your brain, and it's basically you select and select and select. The right dog, the perfect dog, is out there for you, but you've got to find him, and you've got to make sure the whole family is in agreement. The whole family chooses the dog, and by whole family, I don't just mean people. I mean resident dogs and cats too. And so our last two rescue dogs, well, I remember getting Claude. I got a call that the dog you want is here. He's going to be euthanized tomorrow. I described it as a big red doofus. And my wife had found a 110-pound Rottweiler Coonhound cross that was bright red, like a red fox. So I went to see him and checked him out because he'd just bitten someone, so he's going to be euthanized. So I pressed his buttons and he bit me 4 times, but didn't hurt. I didn't break the skin. I mean, the dog's not dangerous. He's just a little scared, So I said, well, yeah, he's lovely. He looks really dull, just exactly what I wanted. So I said, but he's got to meet the resident dogs and cats. And at the Humane Society, they said, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't take him out of here unless you adopt him. And you can't bring your animals here. So I just went to the director and said, look, you've got a dog here that you're going to kill tomorrow, and this is a no-kill shelter. And I want him as long as he gets on with my dog or my cats. So I want them to meet. He says, well, they can meet in my office. So it all worked out, and we took the dog home, and he was with us for 10 more years. And he was the perfect dog. But we looked and looked and looked, and before that, we came very close to a dog. I loved him. He was a much more tricky dog, and his bites were more severe. Good with our dogs, but oh man, he was terrible with the cats. We didn't even let him get close to them. He was relentless. And I said to him, I'm really sorry, buddy. You could live with us, but you can't because the cats were here first. And you've got to be cat friendly. He was obviously a cat killer. So I tell people, search and search and search and search. Don't make hasty decisions. And then take the dog home for a week. And if the SPCA, RSPCA won't let you do that, we'll do it anyway. And if it doesn't work out, you make the decision after a week. Does this dog work out? If not, return it then. Otherwise, you could be taking on a 10 to 14-year-old project. I mean, if you've got a dog that's scared of his own shadow, you're going to be working with this dog for 3 or 4 years, and you're never going to rehabilitate him. You'll make him so he can live with people, sort of, but he will never be what he could have been had he got the right socialization early on. That's the important thing to remember. And a sort of dog that, say, wouldn't be appropriate for, a family with 2 little boys, because it's a little shy. Could be the perfect dog for an 80-year-old guy living on his own who doesn't have too many friends anyway. So as I say, the perfect dog's out there for you, but select the right one. And then when you bring it home, you do exactly the same with it as in my puppy books. Long-term confinement, short-term confinement, errorless house training, chew toy training, teach the manners quickly within a few days, because when dogs change environments, they're very, very receptive to learning new rules. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure you know beforehand what you're going to do the first week the dog's home, and you do it all. No mistakes. And then the transition can be, very easy.
Right. I know there's a bit of a war going on between trainers for those that don't believe at all in any sort of negative reinforcement and those that do. Has this sort of given you any sort of insight into the use of treats for dogs or not in training, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, sadly for me, that I guess when I started puppy classes back 35 years ago, good Lord, am I that old, and introduced some science to dog training, it got up and running, and about 15 years ago, dog training was a beautiful place, and in the last 15 years, it's crashed and burned. And I think there's 2 camps. And I think neither of them are training dogs very well. I mean, you cannot train a dog if you say, I'm only going to use positive reinforcement and negative punishment. And well, what are you going to do when the dog's running out the door towards the street? What are you going to do when the dog's biting another dog? We have to teach people how to deal with undesirable behavior. You can't ignore it. You can't, when the dog jumps up, turn your back on it. I mean, it's insane. It's stupid, and it's not doing owners a favor. When the dog jumps on children and guests, it's a pain, and we've got to deal with it quickly. And so I teach people, well, how do you want the dog to greet people? Have him sit. Then tell him to sit. It's so easy, proactive training. The other side of the camp is, especially in the States, not so much in Australia, because legally, I guess, shock collars aren't available there anymore. In the States, we have a whole load of trainers who don't teach the dog much about what they want him to do. They just jerk his leash with a metal collar, slip collar, pinch collar, or they shock him when he gets it wrong. Well, this is equally silly. But the way I look at both of these camps of dog training, say I go to a lure reward training conference, a clicker conference, or an on-leash training conference, or a shock collar training conference, I look at the dogs and I think none of these dogs are trained. People are still feeding treats and clicking away. Well, those dogs aren't trained. And these people are still jerking their dogs and shocking them. And so I think if you use a tool in training, and my preferred tools are food, because it's easy for owners. I don't need it, but it makes it very easy for owners to use food as a lure and a reward, or toys, tug toys, fetch toys, or games. So they're my preferred uses. I never use anything that would hurt or frighten the dog. But you phase them out quickly. And this is where the treat training's just gone down the toilet. You use the food as a lure to teach a dog what you want him to do. You phase it out within 4 to 5 minutes. I mean, I just gave workshops in Perth, in Melbourne, and I showed them. I took puppies from the audience around out dogs, and here we go. I'm going to teach the dog. And within 4 minutes, I said, have you noticed I don't have food in my hand? I don't have food in my person, but the dog's doing it. And trainers these days don't understand. You use the food, then you phase it out, and it has to be gone from the first training session. But most classes I go to, week 6, they're still giving food. And it's no longer luring or rewarding, it's bribing, which the dog will blow off, because bribing doesn't work. And then they try and change it by upping the level of the food. It won't work. You don't drive behavior by increasing the antecedent. You drive behavior by consequences, by rewarding the dog for getting it right. Additionally, though, we have to teach people how to deal with inappropriate behavior. When the dog, say, is in danger, he's running towards the street, he's running towards a snake, he's jumping on children. Because for some dogs, just because of their breed, if they're a pit or a rottie, and they jump on a child just being friendly, I mean, they're doomed. Not a golden could knock them flat, and no one would give a damn. But when a rottie does it, everyone comes down on like a ton of bricks. So you've got to stop that dog from doing it when dogs are non-compliant. And by that, and that's my term, I don't say they're being disobedient. I don't say they're dissing me. I don't say they're being dominant. That's all rubbish for people. They just don't understand dog behavior, and they don't understand training. They've got some Mickey Mouse view. I mean, I studied dog hierarchies for 10 years. And I got to tell you, it's a little more complicated than what these people say. There's an alpha dog that rules the pack. Oh, get out of here. I mean, that doesn't even happen in wolves. It's too silly for words. They state stuff as if it's true. It's absolutely not true. Dogs do not alpha roll over other dogs. When you film it and see it in slow motion, one dog will go, whoa, but as he does it, the other dog flips on his back. So the rolling over is proactive. It's not one dog picks the dog up and throws him down like that, which is then extrapolated to training as an excuse to abuse dogs and bully them, but more importantly and sadly, to then bully owners to bully their dogs. I mean, I can't stand this stuff. It's not science. It's totally untrue. It's fabricated. But the fact remains, we've got to teach people how to deal with non-compliance. And I guess these are the most exciting advances in dog training, that it's possible to get an on-demand, highly reliable dog by using just your voice, by training off leash, using your voice, and not even raising it. And this is what we did in the workshops that I just did in Australia.
Have you got anything to say about, I won't keep you too much longer because I know I want you to get back. Have you got anything to say about inbreeding or line breeding?
I give seminars on selective breeding and breeding, and I am shocked and appalled with how little dog breeders know. I mean, dog breeders don't even know how to determine when a bitch ovulates. A bit by bitch is the scientific term for female dog. That by observing behavior, you can determine the time of ovulation within 24 hours. I mean, this was part of my research for 10 years. They don't know this stuff. I mean, they're taking like progesterone assays. Well, by the time you get a positive, it's too late. The bitch should have been bred. So you're going to get tiny litters. So I think, always thought, breeders is a funny name for people who don't know about breeding. But when it comes to selective breeding, I will ask a simple question, a simple genetics question, like, okay, you've got a litter of puppies, and let's say one has a recessive trait. So you have 11 puppies in the litter, and one shows a recessive trait, an undershot jaw or umbilical hernia or what have you. What do you know about the genetic constitution of the litter from the parents? And a lot of breeders can't answer that question. And the answer, of course, is that in the litter, even though only one is obviously double recessive, that was chance. On average, 25% of the litter would be double recessive, showing the trait. 50% would be carriers. That means 75% have at least one bad gene, and 25% would be cool. But when it comes to the parents, they both have to at least be carriers.
Sure.
So you should be castrating your stud dog or spaying your bitch, but they don't. And so if they don't understand a simple recessive trait, how could they understand something as complicated as a multi-genetic trait, like, say, breeding for temperament? And to me, the state of dysgenics, so that means bad genes, is disgusting in purebred dogs. Disgusting. I hear your dog's barking at me right now. He's agreeing with me. You know. There was a study done in Imperial College in London which looked at the genetic diversity within the most common breeds. And it's unbelievable. Basically, some very common breeds are produced by about 20 male dogs. It's disgusting. Disgusting. Yeah. And situations like the would be, you know, it's hard to find a Dobie who's got a heart, who's going to live past 7, or a Golden that won't get cancer, or a Boxer or a Shar-Pei, you know, that has a life expectancy. But Cavalier King Charles, I mean, they're lucky if they make 3. And,
really?
Oh, gotcha. I mean, their brains are too big for their skulls, or vice versa. The skulls are too small for the brains. And they're breeding from these dogs. And so in England, I'm really proud of 2 women there. They changed it on their own. Just 2 women in England changed the thing and basically just stopped this rubbish happening at Crufts. So now dogs can't be shown, you know, unless they are medically sound. And my view would be, you know, how can we breed dogs, you know, to improve their genetics? Well, one generation, here's Ian's rules of breeding. You don't breed a bitch till she's 3, so she's adult, and she's free of every breed-specific condition there is. You don't breed male dogs till they're 10. What better indicator of behavioral and physical health than you live to be 10 and you can still do it? So male dogs have to be 10, and it would just change the whole population, you know, within a single generation. Because if people are breeding male dogs at 18 months, 2 years, we don't know how long they're going to live. You know, I had another idea which I presented to several kennel clubs worldwide. I actually presented it at the World Congress of Kennel Clubs years ago. And I remember the Australian Kennel Club was there, you know, at the meeting. And I said, why don't we have a longevity index for litters? That each litter is given a single number, which is the average life expectancy of their great-great-great-great-grandparents. So when you buy a puppy, say he has a longevity index of 12.2, you know he's going to live on average for 12 years. You know, I think it's a crying shame when owners get a dog and it's dead by 5.
Mm.
3. It's disgusting. But will kennel clubs change this? I think not. I think kennel clubs have really failed to monitor the quality of breeding.
Okay, well, what else have I got I want to ask you? I think I'm just about through. Is there anything else that you would like to add that you think would make a difference to people when they acquire a dog to how it turns out for them? Anything we've left out?
Well, I think, it's like driving a car. You don't want to just get in a car and turn it on and off you go without knowing how it works. Um, I tell people that if you've never had a dog, then test drive a few. Like if you're interested in rotties, then test drive 6 adult rotties, put them on leash, take them for a walk, train them to sit, lie down, chill, growl on cue, to shush on cue. And those 6 Rottweilers will teach you more than any book, any DVD. If you can't do it, then learn how to do it before you get one, because the clock is really running. And in the same way that we can ruin dogs before 8 weeks, if it goes into a home where the owner doesn't know what to do, we know what's going to happen to the dog. It's going to end up in the shelter. And that's really silly. It ain't fair. And I actually care more about the family that's surrendering the dog than the dog. I sort of think that's a great shame for that mum and dad and those 2 kids, that now the kids are developing the notion that animal life is expendable.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out. Self-esteem's gone downhill. I mean, I feel sad about the dog, obviously, but I feel really bad about the family. They have been led to believe if they get a purebred puppy, it will be fine. And that is absolutely, basically untrue. You have to make sure the breeder's done their work. They have to know what to do in the first week and month the puppy's at home, then the next few months. And books, go to, say, we have this lovely free website, Dog Star Daily. It's hundreds of videos, free books to download. Go there and find out how first, then practice on dogs. Don't do it with your first dog.
Does it make much difference, do you think, what breed people select on their outcomes?
Nah, I never bother about breed, because it's the same thing. It's like friends of mine selecting their lifelong companions who they're going to marry. I mean, I don't make a comment. I mean, I think that's a really dumb selection, but I keep quiet. And nearly every breed that everyone selects, I don't think this is the breed for you. But the point is, you've selected it. And my job, I think, as a trainer or a behavior counselor is to now teach you how to quickly and easily train this dog so it ends up to be the dog that you want. And to do it in a method that's enjoyable. It's like, I give lots of lectures around the world, and I can make the lectures really boring. I could pick on people and say that they'd never come back again. But instead, I try and make them laugh and make it funny. So they had a good time with me over, say, 3 days, listening. And I think it's the same in all education and dog training. And rather than thinking of dog training as the dog's our adversary in the training arena, I think we should think of dog training like you're going to classes to learn how to play golf, or learn tennis or cricket, or to dance tango. And you don't want your trainer beating on you all the time and shouting at you. You're trying your best, and so's the dog. And I think that's what we forget, that the dog is trying his best. He is not intentionally, believe you me, with all the crap they get and all the nastiness, they are not intentionally trying to misbehave and diss us and dominate us. They are not that stupid. They just want to get on, lie on the couch with us and chill and wag their tails and have a good time. And so, learn how to train the dog in a way that's quick, easy, enjoyable, extremely effective, efficacious, and expedient. And so this gets rid of a lot of methods, just the expediency, because so many methods are far too complicated. Clicker training, 5-year-old child can't learn that. Most men can't master it. The physical prompting, kids can't do that. So training has to be expedient. It has to be suitable to all family members, men, women, and children. So, when I'm training or lecturing, I always think, like now, that I'm speaking to a 5-year-old child. Because if they don't get it, then what's the point of me talking? I'm just blathering away. So I think it's very important that, our training techniques are quick and easy. Easy so the owners can do it, quick so they will do it, enjoyable so they enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. One last thing. You didn't actually specifically mention line breeding or inbreeding, it's per se. Have you got anything to say about that?
Now, that's a
I
very
know
good
it's right
interviewer's
for us.
question. No, I just got distracted with my answer and forgot to answer it.
That's okay.
There's a real difference between line breeding and inbreeding. So if you're breeding for type, so like my favorite breed is Malamutes, and there's two types of Malamute. You know, and you got your Tigers and your Kotzebues. I love Tigers. So if I were breeding Malamutes, I would only breed Tigers. I wouldn't breed Kotzebues. I don't find them, it's not me. I'm sure other people love them, but it's not me. However, I would not breed daughter to father, daughter to uncle, daughter to grandpa. That is inbreeding. Inbreeding. And that's what's caused all of these health problems. Because we haven't checked out our studs properly, and then we bred them too much, and we've spread this gene all through the breed. That is inbreeding. It's bad. It's disgusting. Line breeding, or breeding for type, is you decide the type you want. But, I mean, here really is a case now for artificial insemination. Because where are we going to find a 10-year-old dog that still has his testicles? Because most, people these days are castrating and spaying their animals, early because they think that's the right thing to do to be responsible. Where are we going to find a 10-year-old male dog who's tested, he's healthy, he's 10 years old, that still has his testicles on so we can breed from him? Well, all through Central South America, they exist there. So that's where I would do an extreme outcross, but to the same line or type. And so what you would then get is tremendous hybrid vigor, a very healthy first filial generation or first litter, but you're mixing all the genes up. They would still look the same, but the genes are all different.
Sure.
And,
So
and it's one of the dangers, you see, when you are selectively breeding, you are selecting for one trait. And so, for example, the silver fox study, I think 22 generations, they selected for friendliness to humans and handleability, which they got. It took 22 generations to make them friendly, but then they all had floppy ears and were black and white. So you can't breed them for coats. People don't want coats. And the foxes may have pointy ears. And so this is what happens. If you're breeding for one thing, you know that everything else is going to hell in a handbasket. And so, I think we can do both. I think before we even select our type or our line, we should make sure that dog's healthy. And the quickest way to do this is by only breeding males which are 10 years old. Because the male, you see, can, in one afternoon, produce more puppies than a bitch can in a lifetime. This is why we have much greater controls over male dogs.
You're not even allowed to breed a dog over the age of 8 years old in our kennel club.
Really? Why?
Well, there's restrictions. I don't know.
It's insanity. It's insanity, and it's
It
working
is.
against the breeds.
Yeah.
Too silly for words.
I know.
There's no better indicator of behavioral and physical health than longevity. And I went to a kennel once, and I remember I stayed the night at the breeders, which I seldom stay with dog people. And I was petting this 14-year-old Newfie. And they said, well, we should get to bed because we're showing tomorrow. He's competing in obedience. I said, this dog is competing in obedience? And they said, yeah, and his dad. And his dad, Yeah.
What?
And the point is, in any breed, we can get longevity. And longevity, of course, means health by definition. And why we aren't doing that first, I don't know. And so I would just say that kennel club restriction is just plain stupid and cruel. That's the thing. It's cruel because they aren't selecting for longevity. And so people are going to buy the puppies and they're going to die younger. And that ain't good for the dog. And it's not fair to the owners either.
I think they're going to go the way of the dinosaur, actually.
Yes.
They're going to come into the 21st century, hey? Anyway, I want to let you get back to your party, even though it's such a pleasure to talk with you, Ian.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today and tonight, and good on you.
Thank you, and I look forward to coming back to Australia. All right.
Thanks very much, Ian.